All right, peeps, on today's episode of The Kung Fu Genius, the genius and I will be recapping the epic Hong Kong tour. Lots of gems, at least one secret Kumite bar, and lots of, oh dear God, this dinner is so awkward. And it's only day one. Let's get to it.
And every day, I practice martial arts. Watch out!
Yo, Mikey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Sigong. How are you?
I'm doing great. So our audience may not realize this because we have an episode every week, but this is actually the first episode we've recorded since August, actually. Now, so we didn't even record an episode. Well, we're at the very end of September.
Yeah.
So we've only recorded one episode at the very end of September because in preparation for our awesome Ultimate Hong Kong Kung Fu Tour in Hong Kong, we recorded a buttload of episodes just to make sure that while we were in Hong Kong and in the weeks afterwards, we had enough episodes so we didn't have to scramble to record. But now it's time. We don't have too many left in the bank. We got to start recording again. But for people who don't realize, it's been 4 weeks for us since last week's episode for everyone else. All
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, which, if I did my calculations correctly, I think the last episode should be the Bay Logan episode, and that was we did that 4 weeks ago in Hong Kong.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
Here we are. A lot has happened in these 4 weeks. You've even traveled again since we got back from Hong Kong.
Oh yeah, I actually stayed in Asia. I went to Japan for a week.
That's right.
And then when I went back, because I liked Hong Kong so much, I extended my stay for an extra 3 days when I went back. So I actually went back to Hong Kong for 3 days just to hang out.
Right.
And then I came back, went straight to work after what was essentially like a 18, 19-hour journey.
Crazy.
And then I was in the UK for a week.
Wow, back to the fatherland.
Absolutely. Yes, and I got back from there on Monday and then again went straight to work because...
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Here we are back in New York in the land of sirens. Today, for people who live in New York, today was the day it rained like crazy and we had all the flood emergencies. City Wing Chun has sprung 4 leaks in the ceiling. This is a very old building. Our building here where we teach in New York was built in 1922, so it's over 100 years old. And so occasionally we get leaks and stuff, but that's all part of the charm of having a Kung Fu school. Before we get started, just want to remind everyone that the best way to support the Kung Fu Genius podcast is on Patreon, patreon.com/the Kung Fu Genius. Everyone is excited. Those sirens outside, those are people who are scrambling to support us on Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, you can get access to episodes early, a few days early. You also get access to my Instagram subscriber reels, so you don't also have to subscribe to me on Instagram to get those reels. Plus, every once in a while, I throw little goodies that we don't post here on the channel and a few other things like that. Also, moving forward, as I've announced on previous episodes, we're only going to do Ask Me Anything episodes, AMAs, from questions from our Patreon supporters. So if you have a direct question you want me to answer on the KFG podcast, support us on Patreon, and then you'll get your question answered. So for those of you who don't support us on Patreon, you can still support us by liking this video, sharing this video, and commenting to your heart's delight below in the comments. Those always help and support the algorithm. But if you ask a direct question in the comments for me to answer, I will not be answering those anymore. However, please feel free to suggest episode topics for us as we will start to do more theme-based episodes. And the AMAs we're going to start to do maybe about once a month. I kind of like the episodes where we talk about a topic for a little bit, like today's episode. And so we'll limit the AMAs to about once a month, but those are, again, just for our Patreon supporters. So anyway, yes, so we want to do a little bit of a Hong Kong recap. Before we recorded today, we were still deciding, because the trip was so epic, it's like, are we going to try to do one quick episode and recap the whole week, or are we going to do like a couple parts? I'm leaning towards a couple parts because we need content.
It could be 3 parts at this point, to be fair.
Easily, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I hate to toot my own horn.
But you're going to, though, aren't you?
But I'm about to. I have to say that this year's Hong Kong tour well exceeded expectations. Would you agree? As someone who participated in it, I don't want to speak for those who did the tour, such as yourself. What say you?
Not that I would like to make your head any bigger than it already is.
It's impossible.
But he's not lying. It was so unbelievably epic. I actually haven't been able to... It's very hard to explain to people who aren't like Wing Chun practitioners just how epic... Because it wasn't just... The tour itself, in and of itself, all the plans and everything was also good, was amazing. But then these really cool things just kept happening on top of it.
Yes.
Just randomly. We would be somewhere, and then this added extra cool element would suddenly... We'd all be, including yourself, being like...
Right.
And it was, and the sad thing for me is that the only people I can really geek out about it were on the tour.
Yes.
Or there were the 3 people that weren't able to make it, and I feel bad about telling them how awesome it was.
Yeah, and you don't want to feel like you're bragging or anything like that.
No,
right?
absolutely not.
So if you're not local to NYC, one of the easiest ways for you to improve your Wing Chun training is to train online with me. Online private training is tailored toward the individual and geared towards serious practitioners who want to improve their skills or knowledge base. I offer 2 private lesson subscriptions, twice a month and 4 times a month. Kung Fu Genius listeners use the code KFG Online to get 1 online consultation lesson free with the purchase of any subscription. That code and the links are in the description below. Online private training is a convenient way for you to ask any of the questions you've had about application, form, theory, or even how to teach. Bring a partner to train with you online at absolutely no extra cost. I'll show you how to train with your partner online. Again, use the code KFG Online to get a free consultation lesson with the purchase of any online subscription. Links are in the description below, and I'll see you online.
Yes. So I mentioned it in the build-up to the Hong Kong tour that, look, I'm going to have a set schedule. We're going to do, it's going to be a mix of general tourist stuff that you want to do if you're going to Hong Kong for the first time. Obviously, Kung Fu sites, obviously Wing Chun stuff, Bruce Lee stuff. But this wasn't my first rodeo. I had actually, before the virus of unknown origins, I would go to Hong Kong once a year, and I would usually just informally bring a group of students with me, 4 or 5 students, some of my senior students, and I would just say, hey, why don't you guys come to Hong Kong with me? We'd go to Hong Kong, we'd do some training, I would show them around, and it was kind of more for fun. And then because of this podcast, I would talk about these trips, and people were saying hey, can we also come to Hong Kong with you? So I decided to monetize the shit out of my encyclopedic knowledge of Hong Kong and say, yeah, I can make it a formal tour. Mm-hmm. But although this was the first formal tour that I did in Hong Kong, it wasn't the first time that I actually did this tour. I feel like I've been practicing it for years with my own students. So I have a pretty polished stick. But knowing how every other trip to Hong Kong went, it always went something a little bit like what the last tour went. I would say, okay, we're going to, train with my Sibak on this day. On this day, I'm going to take you guys here. This day, we're going to go here. But inevitably, because of the extremely cool circle of friends I have in Hong Kong, things pop up. Oh, by the way, today, on the last trip, we got to meet Mars, the most famous stuntman, I would say, in the Jackie Chan stunt team. Mm-hmm. And that was not planned.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of other things that weren't planned because every time I'm in Hong Kong, tons of stuff happens that wasn't planned that is super awesome. And that's why I said when I was kind of pitching the tour, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to go here, and much, much more. That's not hyperbole. That's just because I know once I'm there hanging out with my Kung Fu peeps and my martial art friends and my Wing Chun peeps, things are going to happen. Mm-hmm. So
and things really actually did happen. My God.
So we ended up staying at the same hotel, the BP International, right there, the border of Tsim Sa Tsui and Jordan, which was a great location for everywhere you want to go. I mean, most of the Kung Fu stuff is in Jordan, and it's really easy to kind of walk, all the walking stuff, the Bruce Lee stuff's within walking distance of
right
there.
By Kowloon Park as well.
Yes.
So easy to train every day, and then it's Kung Fu Corner.
Yes. And we were on Austin Road, which is the road where Bruce Lee's elementary school was on, right around the corner from the house that he grew up in. So it's really central. But I think one of the coolest elements of this trip is that the group we had, it was almost like a Kung Fu Tour Avengers group, right? We had such a cool mix of people who are... and not just people who were Wing Chun nerds, but we had some people who are fans of the podcast. They didn't. Some of them didn't even do Wing Chun or weren't necessarily Wing Chun people, but they knew about us through the podcast. There was our good friend Bruce Willow, aka Bruno.
Oh yeah.
With his who's a stuntman from Portugal. He has an amazing Instagram channel, the Bruce Willow.
Definitely
And
subscribe.
He also has a YouTube channel. He actually has 2 YouTube channels. I think he's got one that's like in Portuguese, or one that was like more fitness, and one more for his martial arts stuff. His stuff is great. And we even did a reel together last year. So I had already met him before this trip, but he came with his boy Paolo, who's also a stuntman. So Bruno's Bruno's a stuntman, was a martial arts guy, movie nerd, all that kind of stuff. And he has his own podcast. I've been on it recently. And but Paolo, his stunt buddy, came, and the two of them together are so funny. I think any smart producer, like the people who did Big Brother or something like that, they need to put Bruno and Paolo in a house together, because these two guys argue like a combination. It's like a combination of sibling rivalry and
an old married couple. Right? About everything, and they're always fighting and arguing, but obviously in a way where they have a lot of affection for each other. But they were so super cool. They were like such a great addition to the tour. We had Sven and Vicky, 2 Wing Chun practitioners from Germany. Yeah, I love Sven and Vicky.
Yeah,
so
and everyone else was so amazing. Like the group that we had, it was so cool. Everyone was so chill. We had, of course, Ryan Logan, Bay Logan's son, was helping us out with the tour.
Yeah, big time.
But I think one of the coolest things, at least for me, and probably for the Wing Chun practitioners, was the fact that my Sivu, the Grandmaster of the European Wing Chun organization, EWTO, Sivu Keith Kanchbeck, came on the tour with us.
Yes, that was...
Which is like such a rare thing that he's going to go to... When he asked me, he's like, oh, can I come, on the tour? I was like, you want to come on my little kung fu tour of Hong Kong? He's like, yes. I'm like... Okay, and he came with my Sihing, Sivu Giuseppe Schembri, who's also a grandmaster within the EWTO. So it was also like surreal showing people around Hong Kong, doing my normal shtick, and turning around, there's like my Sivu and my Sihing, and they're there with me, like listening to what I have to say about Hong Kong. It was amazing. I've babbled on too much. Since I assume this might be a multiple parter, it might not be. We might finish at the end of this, be like, I don't have anything else to say. Let's talk mainly about like your first impression, maybe the first day or two when you got there. What stood out to you about Hong Kong when you first got there?
Well, obviously being English,
yes,
I was absolutely fascinated to see just how much of our colonial influence was still
in there. Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Even though China's trying to squash it, it's still present. You still and you did that really stick out to you when you saw that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just walking. I mean, first of all, everything's in English.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
I mean, British English, no less.
Yeah, British English. I mean, not until when you get out to the new territories, which obviously we got out to during the tour. That was a little bit different, but just being in Jordan and seeing all of that kind of stuff, and obviously we're at the BP International. For those that don't know, the BP stands for Baden Powell, and it's actually the Hong Kong headquarters for the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, which is a very interesting thing about that hotel, right?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. They even have a Boy Scout store on the 11th floor. Like,
yes.
It's just like,
Yeah, and we had a bunch of people staying at the same hotel too. So Sifu stayed there, a bunch of other people stayed there.
That was the thing. We ended up having the core crew for the most part was there. So we had stuntmen, you and I, obviously, Sijo, and Seabark, and then obviously Brendan was there, Jose. Like it was just Andrew as well.
Editor Andrew. Better do a good job with this episode.
So because as soon as we got there, and obviously you and Brendan and I met at the airport.
Yes.
And making funny jokes about how we just ran into each other on this tour that we all planned to be on. Immediately, like, trains, really nice, on time.
Yes.
Reasonably priced. I was like, okay, this is cool. We got to the end. The mall was like a vortex that we could not escape from.
Yes.
No matter how hard we tried. Which would become a theme, actually, for me, was throughout the tours, like going to these other malls and just being like, they're huge and massive and I have no idea where I am.
Right.
But then when we got there, it was like, of course, we're all like jet lagged to absolute high heaven. And we're just like, so what are we going to do? Go out and get some food.
Yes.
And it was just immediately, everywhere I went, everything smelled amazing.
Yes.
And I just got this feeling that regardless of wherever I would go, it would be just fantastic.
Right. And where we were was a really cool area because we're very close to Temple Street, very close to a lot of touristy stuff, food, and it's very local. You know, when you go, I think Andrew in his great vlog, and by the way, we'll put links to it in the description below. So editor Andrew also has his own YouTube channel, the Adventure Archives, and he does these really amazing travel vlogs. And the entire time he was in Hong Kong, he was filming everything, right? And you know, literally everything. And now he's, at the time of this recording, he's edited 3 of them, which I think just gets us to day 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. And they're amazing, the way he puts them together. And with the music, and I mean, it's like something you would see, it's like an Anthony Bourdain episode, like the way everything's shot, right? It's really incredible. So I would definitely recommend, if you guys actually want to get a flavor of what the Hong Kong trip felt like, then check out Andrew's video blogs or vlogs or vlogs or whatever you call it. I'll put the link for those in the description. But our boy Bruce Willow, also started making some vlogs as well. I think he did one for each day of the tour. And as of this recording, I think he did up to day 2. Although he said after watching Andrew's, he was like, oh man, I thought my travel vlog was awesome. And then I saw Andrew's and it's like, I made Coyote Ugly and he made Shawshank Redemption. But no, Bruno's is still great. Yeah. And then another person who was on the group, Kevin Maley, Kevin Mail, sorry if I got that wrong. He also made a little video like of the whole tour. And his came out right away. I was surprised how fast he edited his together. Yep. I think it was like the day after we left. He must
have done it on the plane.
Yeah. So there are a few videos where you can actually go and see and get a vibe for what it was like. I think everyone had a really good time. It was really cool seeing Sifu, and it was great being there. It was great, you know. Like I said, it sounds kind of weird, but. Because obviously I teach Wing Chun, and Hong Kong culture is something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I really get a kick out of introducing my students and also to other people who want to come to Hong Kong for the first time, because this trip represented my 27th trip to the former British colony. And I wish that on my first trip, I had someone like me to be like, all right, here's where to go, here's what to see, here's what to avoid. Because the reason why, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're walking around Hong Kong with me, I'm like, hey, we're going to go down this street here. Hey, there's this place over around the corner we're going to go check out. Like anywhere we are, I know like the direction, where to go, how to get there, everything. But that came through 26 hard-fought trips to Hong Kong where I was exploring and finding out and trial and error. My first few trips to Hong Kong were not nearly as productive as the more recent trips in terms of knowing where to go, what to do, and also the connections that I have.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because the thing is, it's like I've been telling everyone about what an amazing time I had.
Right.
And like it was just fantastic. And yet, I'm not sure how to explain to people that are not kind of kung fu savvy or like into that kind of stuff exactly what they would do while they were there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because it's like, if you go to like Japan, like, you know, obviously like there's tons of stuff that is very touristy in Japan, in Tokyo, like that. But in Hong Kong, I was just like, well, yeah, you can go down and see like see the river. You could obviously go to Macau maybe.
Right.
You know, but then.
Did you say see the river?
Yeah, pretty much. Rivers are great. I like bodies of water. You know what I mean?
Although it's it's not a river.
It's an estuary.
Okay.
Well, the point I was making, I guess, was I couldn't think of the words for like the Hollywood Walk of Fame was what it was, like the Hong Kong version of it. So
Avenue of the Stars.
The Avenue of the Stars. Yeah. That's why I couldn't remember the name. So you got the Avenue of the Stars, right? But then after that, I'm like, you know, I mean, if I'd gone there and not known anything, I probably would have just spent my whole time pretty much what we did, but then without the tour, just eating and drinking and doing whatever, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So...
Emphasis on whatever. Yes.
That's for the KFG After Dark. But, you know, it's been very hard to explain to people who aren't like Kung Fu related just how amazing it is and what they would do there other than go to Lan Kwai Fong.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, although there were a couple people on the tour that I would say are probably not the biggest kung fu heads, and I think they all had a really good time because I tried to have a mix of like the typical Hong Kong tourism and obviously have an emphasis on like the kung fu, Wing Chun, and Bruce Lee stuff. Because it would be weird if I took you guys to Hong Kong and we only looked at like nerdy Wing Chun stuff and I didn't take you to Lan Kwai Fong, or we didn't have a ferry ride over the harbor, not the river, or you didn't see the lights of Hong Kong Island at night, or I didn't take you to Lady Street or something like that, right? So I wanted to make sure that like anyone who came on this tour and then told their friends about it, and some of their friends went to Hong Kong, would be like, well, did you go to the Peak? Yeah, we went to the Peak. Did you see Lan Kwai Fong? Yeah, we went to Lan Kwai Fong. But we did all the other stuff too that you normally wouldn't do if you went on a typical kind of tour. We went to Stanley. We did the whole south side of Hong Kong Island. I mean, we did a lot of touristy stuff.
Yeah, totally.
We also fucking hung out with Mars. All right?
Yes.
And that was pretty amazing. Now, admittedly, the bit with Mars was right at the end of the tour, after the tour had finished. Bay Logan sent me a text and he's like, hey, Mars is coming over to the Marshall Club because they were shooting some DVD extras or something for some upcoming re-release. I think either a Project A and one more movie. So we basically got to watch Mars get interviewed for these extras, and it was...
So Mars wasn't being interviewed for the other documentary?
Which documentary?
The one that we did the sound, because this was a personal highlight of mine, being able to do the sound for Sijo when we did that interview with him.
No. That's my project. No, this was something else.
I only say that because Mark Oberdorfer was there when Mars was there as well.
Yeah, no, he came just because he wanted to see Mars, because he's a geek.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Yeah,
All right. For a second, I just thought, oh, he's a filmmaker. He's obviously there doing this thing.
Yes,
right?
no. He was there because it's frickin' Mars, okay?
Fair.
So for people who don't know, Seng is Mars in Cantonese. Fa means fire. Seng means star, because Mars is called Fire Star in Chinese because it's red.
Yeah.
And that was his nickname or his stage name. And if you've seen old school Jackie Chan movies, you undoubtedly have seen Mars's face. Police Story, Project A. He's either some guy Jackie's fighting, or he's like a buddy, or he's in Dragon Lord. He's in all of these films. But what a lot of people don't know is he, because I know the big party line is Jackie Chan does all his own stunts. It's not entirely true. I would say Jackie Chan does most of his stunts, or did, I should say. I mean, he's older now. I don't think he's doing as many stunts, if any, now. But some of his really hard stunts, like the famous clock tower stunt in Project A, that was actually really Mars.
Yeah.
And Mars told us the whole story, and it was amazing. I don't want to give too much away because it's in whatever DVD extra, whatever upcoming release. By the way, every time you take a swig of that coffee, half of that, it's not the ice that's dripping on your shirt, it's the coffee. So every time you take a sip, I don't know if there's like a leak in it, but there's like all this coffee that is just landing on your shirt. And I look at it and I immediately forget what the hell I was talking about. I get lost into the coffee being absorbed into your T-shirt. Lucky it's a black T-shirt. It's a flavor saver. You can smell it later.
I guess I don't know. This trip was so awesome that I've forgotten how to use my mouth.
Yes. Basic functions as a human,
basic
right?
bodily functions.
Yeah. So Mars was really cool, and one of the highlights of Mars being there, being interviewed, is that. Although Mars is generally a stuntman, but he was also in Enter the Dragon. There's photos of him on the set with Bruce Lee. What's interesting is, although he was a stuntman, so he was either a stuntman for Jackie or someone else, or he's just a stunt player in the movie. He did have a contract, I think, in the late 70s to do a few movies where he was the star. And he did one, and it didn't become a big hit, so they didn't fulfill the other two movies of the contract. But we watched that movie that he was the star. Sekin, Han from Enter the Dragon, was in there, and Mars essentially gave us live commentary to this film that he starred in, and he said he had not seen the movie in 40 years, and I forget the name of it because the title. There was like a Spanish title.
Yes, it was a Spanish
and
title.
then I forget the English. It was something about like the tramp or the gentleman in the whatever or something like that, right? But it was amazing. Like the stunts were amazing. And then while things were going on, he was saying, "Oh, I got really hurt when I did this," and then he would give a little background. And that's what I like about Mars, because I've had the really great opportunity to meet a number of Hong Kong action stars, not just stuntmen, but like, people like Lo Mong, Lu Fang, all the guys who were in the Venoms and all this stuff. And they always have these great stories. But sometimes with some of these guys, they don't really remember all the details, because when they were contract players, sometimes they would make so many movies. And they didn't know that some of these movies got released to the West and became popular. And they probably forgot which ones those were. So sometimes, like, I remember even asking Sifu Leung Ting once, who was a film choreographer, assistant choreographer for Shaw Brothers for a number of movies. I asked him about some of the movies that he was on, and he was like, "I don't remember any of that stuff." He's like, "We would just show up. We had the script, we had to put something together, and then we did the next job after that." So it's like, for us, it's really memorable. For them, it was just like, in the Shaw Studios, you would show up on Monday, and some director would say, "Okay, you're playing a Manchu prince. Here's your costume. Here are your lines. You're going to show up at 10, and there you go." They didn't audition for these roles. They were on contract.
Yeah.
So they would just be, and then, okay, you're going to do some, so-and-so is going to put together the choreography. Go ahead and put that together, and then we're going to shoot at 4 o'clock today. So the thing is, they would just show up and they would just make movies and read scripts and have to memorize lines, and they didn't even maybe know what the story was. So it wasn't like the idea of like auditioning for a movie and then you get ready for your role and you're a method actor, and then it's like you were just given a costume, given a bunch of lines, and you showed up and you did your thing, right? More or less. So sometimes when you ask these old, like, especially the Shaw guys, because they were really pumping those movies out, they don't really remember shit. Because they were like, it was almost like going to a 9-to-5 job Monday through Friday. And it's like, explain what happened on the 18th week of any job you had 20 years ago. It's like, you're not going to remember that. But Mars has an incredible memory for details, for facts, for behind the scenes stuff. And this guy was salty with this guy, and then this guy didn't want to do the stunt, so I had to come in and do it. But what Mars also remembered the amount of money he got paid for stunts. And so that was really great, just to like be in his presence, just seeing his face so many times in all those movies and hear those stories. It was really, really awesome.
Yeah. He was super cool.
He was super cool. So the first day, so we had all arrived a number of days. Like the tour started on a Monday. Mm-hmm. I think we arrived on a Thursday, so we had a weekend of kind of getting used to Hong Kong time. And
we also did a little kind of pre-tour tour.
Yes,
just so I got an idea of what was going on. I
was a little nervous because it was the first time I had such a large group. Like I said previously, I would just bring 5 or 6 of my students with me to Hong Kong, and that's manageable. Plus, those are my students. I know them. We're all close, right? But now I had like a group, and while I knew a number of them personally, there were some people there I didn't really know that well. And so you don't know what's the group dynamic going to be like. And also, what's it going to be like walking through the narrow streets of Kowloon with 25 people? And like, are they even going to hear me? Like, what's going on? So I wanted to make sure I had a couple guys like you kind of in the group to kind of keep moving people along. So I basically gave you guys a pre-tour.
Yeah.
Like I took you to some of the sites and I'm like, this is what I'm going to talk about. Okay. That way you don't feel bad if I lean on you to herd a bunch of, because it's like herding, HERDING, herding. All right. Because I said this in Hong Kong. I'm like, this is like herding cats. And someone thought I said hurting cats. That would be enjoyable. No, just kidding.
Well, with the American accent where you soften the T's to D's,
yes.
Of course you're saying
right.
cats.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's okay, I got it.
I understand. Yeah, we have lots of problems with our accent. Governor. All right, so anyway, I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to need you and Brendan to kind of help me along. So let me give you a little pre-tour so you don't feel bad. Basically, you're going to have to hear the same thing twice. So you're not going to feel bad if you don't hear it the second time because I have you, herding a bunch of cats in the back, right? But it actually ended up working fine. Everyone kind of, we stayed in our groups. Everyone kind of moved along. It worked. We didn't lose people too often. It wasn't too bad. So so after we had kind of acclimated in that first weekend, the day one, we did a walking tour of Kowloon. So basically walked around, we did Temple Street, and then I showed the Leung Ting Gym, Queen's Elizabeth Hospital, a few Wing Chun sites, Bruce Lee's home, and then we went down to Chim Sa Choi and went to the carport where Bruce Lee took the photos. We had lunch at the I Square Mall.
Yep.
And
Jackie Chan, was it the Super Cop?
we went to Police Story 1. We went to Wing On Plaza where people could see where he did the jump. And then at nighttime, I couldn't be there because I had something really bizarre happen to me on Monday night.
Mm-hmm.
Monday night, so basically every day I set it up so like we would have a main thing we would do in the day, like go to Yip Man's grave or go to Chingsan Monastery. There'd be like the main thing we're doing that day, and then I gave you guys usually a little bit of a break, and then we would do something again in the evening, something a little bit like a little bit less heavy. You know what I mean? And on the first night, the less heavy thing was going to be, we're going to go, over to the Hong Kong Island side and take a look at Manmo Temple, and then, look at the every night at 8:00 on the Hong Kong Island side, they have a light show. All the buildings are coordinated. And if you're on the Chim Sa Choi side, you can see the lights. It's amazing. So I wanted you guys to like have all that on the first day, a walking tour, so you knew what a cool neighborhood we were in, see some touristy things, stuff like that. But I couldn't join on the Monday night, and for a kind of a surprise. Speaking of surprises and last minute shenanigans, so then I had to kind of put Ryan in charge, and then you guys go over to the Manmo Temple, only for me to find out that they closed at 8:00 or something like that, right? Oh no, sorry, they closed at 6. And so by the time we got there, the temple gate was closed. I know that now for the future. But Bay Logan swooped in to save the day and started talking about all the movies that were shot there, and then you guys got to do your thing, which was really great. So that part was saved. But the reason why I couldn't come and lead my own tour on Monday night, and this is why I had hired an assistant just in case something came up, is because I had dinner with Sifu Leung Teng.
Hey everyone, just want to let you know Wing Chun Illustrated is now offering a paperback edition through Amazon, reaching a larger global market. And no, they're not ditching the glossy magazine edition through MagCloud. You can now simply choose the version of this magazine you prefer and the one with the cheapest shipping wherever you live. Order your copy of Wing Chun Illustrated today across 12 Amazon marketplaces with free shipping for Prime members. Go and check that out.
Which for anyone who's kind of followed the podcast for a while, you might understand what that the awkwardness that might entail.
It was a surprise for all of us.
It was a surprise for all of us because, for the people out there who don't know, Sifu Leung Teng, so I'm from the Leung Teng lineage, the style of Wing Chun that I teach is from him. However, I left his association in 2011. And Sifu Leung Teng, had a very large Wing Chun association, perhaps the largest, if not one of the largest, especially because of his presence in Europe, mainly due to the efforts of Sifu Keith Kansprecht, who was with us on that trip. And I was, a card-carrying, flag-waving, official banner holder of the Leung Teng organization until 2011. And I quit because of, there was some politics and stuff going on in the States. Actually, the reason why I quit didn't have anything to do with him directly. It was because he had and still has idiots running his U.S. association who have, since I left, there was a mass exodus of Wing Chun instructors from the U.S. association, which I would assume Sifu Leung Teng probably blames me for, although I always equate it to, the moment in The Wizard of Oz where they throw the water on the witch and then she starts melting, and then like Dorothy and the lion, everyone, they're like worried that all of the witch's people are gonna jump on them for killing the witch, and everyone's like ding dong, the witch is there. Like everyone's like happy because they were basically oppressed by her, right? When I quit the Leung Teng Association, I did it on my own, and my schools basically stayed with me. And I think because at that time I had one of the biggest, if not the biggest school in their association in the U.S., all right? Yeah. Not elsewhere. I mean, there are schools in Europe that are way bigger than mine, but for the U.S. at least. And I think it was kind of one of those moments like, oh my God, that guy quit? Oh, I think I can quit too. And then there was like kind of an exodus over the next 3 years of their most high-profile Sifus, and what you kind of have left are... I hate to sound harsh, but it's not. The stars have all left. All right. Yes, I'm not saying I was one. I'm just saying like all the main people who really could do something and kind of had a presence or had a name, they're all gone. Right. Yeah. And so you were left with kind of the runt of the litter in terms of the management and the instructors. And I assume that Siva Leung-Ting and kind of his way of thinking blames me for that. But I always just say everyone was kind of unhappy with the way the association was being run. And when I quit, I think that gave some other schools the confidence to also quit, right? Yeah. So anyway, as a result, Siva Leung-Ting probably doesn't have a very high opinion of me, but this is not something I control, and I don't really care, all right? Yeah. So I didn't really have anything, after I quit, I just went on my own merry way. I opened my association and did my own thing. And around 2015, 2016, that's when the infamous newspaper battle in Hong Kong occurred between me and Siva Leung-Ting, where he very stupidly, in my opinion, tried to make a claim in a newspaper that I only learned Wing Chun for 1 week. And then when the newspaper Apple Daily, which no longer exists because China says they should not exist, so Apple Daily go bye-bye. They asked me for I had an article in Apple Daily, and then Siva Leung-Ting responded with this idiot only learned Wing Chun for 1 week or whatever, right? Which is great. And he had his assistant Robin sign it, so because of course Siva Leung-Ting never wants to put his own name to his dirty work. So he has his assistant sign it as if it's his statement. And his assistant, Robin, is someone that I knew for years, and he knew damn well that I had trained in Europe and had trained. I was already an instructor when I opened my school, obviously. Yeah. And then after I was an instructor, after I had opened my school, then I started learning privately from Siva Leung-Ting and in seminars here and ever for years, for 9 years, after I was an instructor. Yeah. So Robin knew that, but of course he's kind of a rubber stamp. Whatever Siva Leung-Ting tells him to jump off a bridge, he won't even ask how high because he's getting uppity if he asks another question. If Siva Leung-Ting tells him to jump off a bridge, he just jumps off a bridge, right? And so he rubber stamped it, which was kind of really I knew this guy, and he writes that, right? Yeah. So anyway. When they asked me to counter the claim, I said, wow, if I only learned Wing Chun for 1 week, I must be a Kung Fu genius. And then they put that in the little subheading, and then all my friends in Hong Kong who saw the article say, hey, Kung Fu genius, hey, Kung Fu genius. So, which is funny because I do occasionally have to answer this charge in the comments by Johnny Come Latelys to my podcast. Well, it's not very humble calling yourself a Kung Fu genius. Yeah, I'm not the one calling myself a genius, all right? Okay, and if you understand the origins of the name, all right, and I hate to constantly, because I've repeated this story about 3 or 4 times throughout the podcast, but there's still chuckleheads in the comments who don't know that. So, Andrew, what I think I want you to do is take this segment where I'm talking about how I got the name, and let's cut this into a shorter video so I can just plug that link anytime. So it's not very humble calling yourself genius, buddy. All right? Because the reason is, the joke was my former teacher, who I had learned from for 9 years after I was already an instructor, told a bald-faced lie that I had only learned Wing Chun for 1 week. And then I said, well, I must be a Kung Fu genius if I learn all that Wing Chun in 1 week. It's self-deprecating humor. It's a joke. Yes. And as I've said multiple times, in terms of all of my friends in the Kung Fu circle in Hong Kong, people like Mak Sifu, or like you met Arthur Tang, or whomever, all right? Or Lee Tin Loy from Southern Mantis, or Wan Kam Leung, a very good friend of mine who you also met, right? I'm not even in the same room as them in terms of knowledge and experience and claim to the throne of Kung Fu genius. It is hyperbole. It is an exaggeration. Mm-hmm. It is a joke. It is done poking fun of me, okay? Mm-hmm. And anyone who attacks me for taking it seriously doesn't know their history. So anyway, last month I had dinner with the guy who was the reason why I have the nickname Kung Fu Genius. Yes. Awkward. It's getting awkward in here.
It was so awkward that you had to come I managed to find a terrible bar in Jordan.
Well, just to kind of be away while that was going on. Okay?
We were all ready to go after the jet lag had sort of kind of got a few of us, and it was just I want to, because it's me. I was I want to go out for a drink somewhere. I found this To get to this bar, as you know, because you ended up coming to the bar.
Which one was it?
It was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was the one in Jordan.
Okay.
And it
there are
was
many in Jordan. Like, it's that one bar in Jordan. Is like,
well, I found many afterwards,
Right.
but I had a nightmare trying to find all these bars. But I found this one, and you have to go up these steps that look like you're going into some very, very sketchy flats. Apartment building,
Yeah,
right?
flats. Apartment buildings for the non-Brits.
And then you go up and you go up one flight, long corridor, another flight, little bit of a corridor, turn right, and there's a small one, and then you have to go into this door, and then it's like almost like an airlock. On the inside of the door, there's all this soundproofing, and then you go into the bar, and it's clearly on the second or third floor, but there's no windows.
Yeah.
And but they're darts machines, and everything is black.
It's like the way to the Kumite.
And I was just like, you just text us, I need to just, I need to not have any more weird conversations. Like, we got you. Come on out. Come to the bar. Let's go. Let's have a beer. You know what I mean?
So in reality, Sivu Langting wasn't. So for full disclosure, he wasn't there to meet me. He wanted to see my Sivu, Sivu Kanspect, who's obviously his student and his main representative for Europe, because it's very rare that Sivu is ever in Hong Kong. It was just kind of a weird thing that I was also there, because I'm like the former rebel student of his association there with his like number one guy, right? So I was kind of awkwardly stapled onto the dinner reservation, right? So it was Sivu and my Seng talking with him, and then oddly enough, Robin was there. Okay, the guy whom I had known for many years, and the guy who kind of rubber stamped that thing. Now, to be fair, because I did just say some pretty harsh words about my Seng, okay? What I just said about him, all right, being a rubber stamp for Grandmaster Langting and writing this thing that he knew wasn't true and everything like that, that was him then, okay? He has since gone through some stuff and he's changed, okay? So I don't want to look, if you look at past versions of me, okay, you're going to find versions of me that were complete assholes. You find current versions of me that are still complete assholes, right? I'm not, it's not a holier than thou thing. It's just that, when you make a public statement in a newspaper and you put your name on it and it's kind of nonsense, that's a little bit different than you just said some shit to someone, you know what I mean? And so I saw him then also for the first time since that stuff, right? And he's gone through some stuff personally, and I can tell you that he's also changed. Like, he's not that guy that he was. So what I said a moment ago, I because you said something in between, I wanted to say this right after I had said that, so it didn't seem like, because then now that whole statement can be taken out of context for me to I'm talking shit about Rob. But the thing is that Robin has chilled out. Robin has gone through some stuff. I would believe that he wouldn't do the same thing now. All right. And the reason why I can't blame him for that, all right, even though it affected me, is that one, he gave me the coolest fucking nickname in martial arts, okay? Even my jiu-jitsu friends think the Kung Fu Genius is a fucking cool nickname, right? Because, like Kung Fu may not have the biggest reputation right now in MMA circles, but yo, bro, that's the Kung Fu Genius over there. It's kind of funny, right? But the truth is, people like Sivu Brian Cuttle, they know so much more about all the Kung Fu forms than I do. I'm just a Wing Chun nerd. It's a very undeserving title for me, but it's just kind of funny. And I'm married to it now because it's the podcast name, right? I don't think Robin would do that now. But the thing is, the reason why I don't blame him, besides the fact that it ended up coincidentally giving me this great nickname, is because I know what it's like to be under Sivu Langting's influence. And when you're following him and you're learning from him and you're in that circle, he's got that kind of charismatic magnetism. I mean, he was this guy who had learned from Grandmaster Yip Man, and he's been through all this stuff, and he's was very popular and very successful. And when you really have a chance to talk to him, he's got great stories. He knows so much about all the different Kung Fu styles, all the different Wing Chun styles. He can tell you about the squabbles between all these guys. If you're a Wing Chun nerd and you have the time to spend time with Sivu Langting and he likes you, it's really great. And I also know what it's like to be under his influence, because I too have written statements against other people on his behalf. Yeah. Things that I regret as well. I have also, sent emails, or I've ostracized people who left the association because he told me to do that. Yeah. So the thing is, I don't blame Robin for that at all. Okay? When I say he was a rubber stamp and if Sifu Leung-Ting told him to jump, he would jump, maybe the 2016 version of Robin, all right? But not the 2023. That guy's a different guy. So I just need to be very, very clear. And also because I understand what it's like to be under Sifu Leung-Ting's influence when he's close to you. And that feeling like, hey, this is the guy who's teaching me all this stuff. Man, if he asks me to do this, I'm going to totally do it. You know what I mean? Just to give you an idea, when I started learning from him in 2002, he had a guy whom he considered an enemy. And he asked me if I would go beat that guy up for him. And I was like, sure, of course. You know, whatever. You know, it's like because he's teaching me and like you want to kind of represent or whatever. But this would have entailed me traveling to another country and fighting in another, like basically going into someone's school in another country and assaulting them and then hoping not to get arrested by said local authorities in this foreign country and then making my way back to the States.
I imagine you get there, you have a return trip in the same hour, right? You know
yes,
what I mean?
exactly.
So you get to play.
Right? Yes.
You keep the meter running in Italian. You know
yes,
what I mean?
exactly.
I'm taking a guess. I don't know. Right? You know what I mean? Come on, quick.
Right. Yeah. So, but I remember at that time I was in a relationship and I told that to my significant other and she was like, you're an adult. You have a school. You have responsibilities. You're going to go to another country and fight someone and fly back? Like, what are you even thinking? I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, until she said that, she was the voice of reason. If that person that he wanted me to beat up was there, I would have done it. So the thing is, I don't blame. I know how influential Sifu Leung-Ting can be, especially when you're learning from him and you want to please him and stuff like that. So, my apologies if I came off sounding like an asshole about 10 minutes ago for what I said. It's just that it felt like a little betrayal, and even now it still feels like that.
Yeah.
But after I saw him, I think it's all done.
Well,
it's all water under the bridge.
It's like being married to someone.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Sometimes your significant other do stuff and you have to back them because you're the good husband.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though you know it's
even though you know it's wrong. So I don't blame Robin for that. If I was in his position, I probably would have written the same damn thing about someone else, right? Yeah. So anyway, so I sat there awkwardly at dinner, and Sifu Leung-Ting kind of looked at me a couple times. His wife was there. She's kind of his spokesperson now, I suppose. And it was awkward. It was weird. It couldn't end soon enough. And I was there just to support Sifu. You know what I mean? Because quite frankly, I didn't want to be there. I didn't have anything to say to him, and I didn't really say anything to him the whole time. We took a couple photos, and that was it. And that was day one. And that's all I got to say about that. Okay, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius. Hit that bell for notifications. If you have any ideas or comments or suggestions about a future episode of the KFG, put them in the comments below. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm Seagung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex Richter, always the victor.
Since the court case, I'm surprised they let me stay. I'm kidding. I couldn't resist. I'm terrible. You can cut that out, Andrew. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius and I will be... Oh, my God. See, I was about to say all sorts of hot nonsense. Fucking bullshit is that? Fucking bullshit is what it is. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the... Lots of gems, at least one secret Kumite bar, and lots of... I know, I remember it now. I was just like, okay. The genius and I will be recapping the epic Hong Kong tour trip. That doesn't sound weird. Shit, Hong Kong He's like a child. He's like a child. He just likes buttons. Anyway.